Welcome to SplunkTalk. Woo! A Splunk podcast that's all Splunk and no junk. I'm your host, Birch, here with co-host Hal.
Are you going to be this chipper the entire podcast?
And in the producer's corner, we do not have Jeremy. He is fine. Everything's good there. He just had to miss this one.
It was liposuction. That's what I'd heard.
Yeah, it was actually to add fat. So this is episode season 2, episode 7, and we'll be joined today by our special guest, Nate McKervey. One thing we want to acknowledge and get out of the way right away is that we are recording this in the midst of the COVID-19.
Weird times.
The what?
Weird times.
Weird times, that's for sure. And I know a lot of people, this is really at the forefront of everything they're hearing and talking about. And we decided, you know what? This is all Splunk and no junk. And that topic goes in the junk bucket. So we're going to focus on fun things here and give ourselves and our listeners an opportunity to really detach and escape from all those shenanigans.
I like it.
Yeah, me gusta. Before we go any further, with that being known, how's your month been?
Let's just, it's been, it's been a little rough, but I like to learn and I like to do new things. So this is kind of a season of that for me. I know you know, but the listeners might not know the Splunk calendar. It kind of starts in February. So a lot of new projects get started around then. So, I'm doing some new things, getting into some other areas. And so it's exciting time, I guess, at the company as far as that goes. But yeah, it's, interesting times to be sure. Although I did look to see, like, there's a saying that is misquoted to be an ancient Chinese proverb kind of thing. May you live in interesting times.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's actually not a Chinese proverb. So I don't know. Like I read this, there's a page, online talking about it, and it's really long and not helpful. The short version is, no, this was not quoting some sort of, ancient Chinese wisdom at all. But everyone knows of it as what they say, and, may you live in interesting times. I still get it. That's that. So it is definitely a way to look at it. The saying stands
regardless of its source.
Yes.
It's a tongue twister.
Yes, it is. So what have you been up to?
Well, what is to be assumed? Going food shopping and not seeing anything that I can buy. A lot of being at home. I actually went for a drive yesterday just to get
out of the house.
Be in my self-contained vehicle.
Yep.
But even then, you got to be careful because you don't want to, driving's dangerous. You don't want to get into any dangerous situations. But anyway, again, I want to focus on
the fun stuff. You live nowhere near anything defined as the woods, do you?
I do have some woods, but
okay.
It's just like the ways to get into said woods are a big drop off. So
gotcha.
I have to be quite serious about it. I can't just wander in.
Okay, now I kind of want to see the video of you trying to do that.
I was actually outside in said woods and was back there cutting some weeds or something that were growing over, and I suddenly saw some movement, like not far from me in said woods, and realized that a deer had been just frozen, like very
literally frozen,
like a deer frozen in the headlights, kind of.
Wait, no, frozen in the headlights, or like it's winter and it's a nice deer.
No, I held back on my Elsa powers.
Okay.
The deer was electing to not move.
Okay.
Out of fear of this. the deer was afraid of this.
For those listening, we're talking about the visage of Mr. Birch.
And so I admired it and then started walking away when I realized that about twice as far that the deer was to me was like 5 more. So this is the one who was like, don't worry about it. I'm going to go over here. You can all stay together. Uh-oh. And, but it was cute. It was cute seeing like 6 deer doing their deer thing.
Yes. I live kind of close to the woods, so deer encounters are kind of frequent actually. But yeah, it's easier for me to, like, I could go see wildlife easier than I could go see people right now. Right now.
Yeah. So I just realized something. I noticed that the way that this current recording is going, I don't see both of our faces next to each other. And I don't know if it's because it's only 2 of us right now or if we changed a setting in the recording. So if
there is a setting in the recording also, I believe. But if you want it for yourself, click on the gallery view button in the top right as opposed to speaker view.
Okay. Well, I don't want to mess with it right now, but if we perchance do end up with a recording where you don't see all of our faces at the same time, acknowledged and sorry about that. And if this works out fine, I didn't say anything.
Yeah, that was quality podcasting right there.
Yes.
So we should probably talk about something slightly Splunk related.
Yeah. Does that mean you have a...
No, I'm working on it. Let's see. So one thing that I have been talking to customers about is the new dashboard framework. Have you played with it yet?
I have it, but I haven't actually gone hands-on with it. And our guest actually has done a lot of work with it.
That's right. That is a good point.
So nice.
You'll have to definitely bring that up.
But have you done anything novel or any cool breakthrough as of late?
At this point, it's more of a exposure, like, help people understand that it's there. What is it for? It says it's beta. Is that safe? So to that end, this is so when you open up Splunk Web, you log in. You're basically sitting inside of this web framework, and it renders all of the views for you, the dashboards and the panels and even the administration stuff like that. The
dashboards and the panels and that.
Yeah. So we have multiples of them. There have been two or three, and this is another web framework to render the pages differently, basically.
And so you can switch it out. Another, I'll ask.
Well, we had Cherry Pie was the first one,
right?
And we had the short-lived Django-based one.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if there's a separate new one that has a separate name, or that was merely just a kind of an evolution of Cherry Pie, or what. But I don't know what to call because they went in
the current one
obsoleted advanced XML, and enhanced simple XML. That's one thing. So, but when you install the new beta app, then it's basically another web framework. You don't have to deal with that behind the scenes, but basically it is a self-contained way to get at those visualization features. Hey, that is a face I've not seen in many a time. I was going to say a number of years, and it's not been that long. Hey man, how's it going, Nate?
It's going well. How are you?
I am doing pretty awesome.
I think Nate's soundproofing trumps our setups.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress.
I'm a little bit jealous. Just slightly jealous.
Welcome, Nate.
Thank you.
As mentioned, you're walking into the main show here.
We expected you, so it's okay.
I'm gonna ask the most obvious question that everyone is thinking about. So when you put up the soundproofing, do you have to do opposite angles for each one for optimization?
That's what I was thinking.
I don't know. Probably. It's not soundproofing. It's sound dampering. And
that's right.
I found out temperature fluctuations mess up the mounting, so I have to remount it. You can see gaps.
By the way, that's my favorite Led Zeppelin album. Temperature fluctuations affect the mounting.
What's your favorite Pink Floyd song?
Who's that directed to?
Mine.
What? Yours? So no, when you said long title of a fictional song in this case, but have you heard of several species of animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pict, which is the actual name of a Pink Floyd song?
Oh, wow. So
you should listen to it sometime.
In a similar thread, my favorite band picked their name. They would change their name for every show when they first started. So every show they would say, hey, what's the band's name that's going to play? And they picked a new name. And then one day they decided to think of the longest name they could think of. And that's the one that they stuck with. And that's how we got the Presidents of the United States of America.
Oh, interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice band, actually.
Yeah.
Do not click on the link that I just pasted in the chat, because then it will play the song that I just mentioned, and that would probably be slightly disruptive. But
yes,
you could, if you wanted to, another time, just for reference.
So we'll add it in the show notes.
So we should probably introduce people to Nate.
Yeah.
That probably makes sense.
Yeah. So, Nate, I know you as someone who has had a storied career here at Splunk. Just off the top of my head, I believe you did some time in professional services. You were doing technical marketing. You have been on many main stages at Conf. And lately you've gone into some very, very cool new projects around blockchain. But I think one thing we always like to do, and I just realized this is sort of a pattern, is tell us about how you got here. Like what is?
Yeah.
Were you using Splunk before? What did you do? Anything interesting out of college that got you to Splunk, and then the roles you've had?
Yeah. You can never predict your path. Like for me, I was studying physics in college, and college is expensive, and I was also I took a part-time job as a sysadmin at a company called Harris Corporation, and kind of fell in love with the sysadmin work, but then realized that physics didn't pay well out of college. So I thought, I'll keep going with this computer thing, and so I wasn't the greatest sysadmin.
It might be a fad.
The computer thing. Yeah. So I broke a lot of stuff. And so I had to fix the stuff that I broke. And so I found this thing called Splunk back in like 2005. And it helped me fix stuff fast. And it took me a few years more before I started to realize that, hey, this isn't just about fixing broken stuff. This is about, solving security problems and then eventually business problems. And that's when it hit me, oh my gosh, this data thing is going to be big. I want to go full time into data. And so that's why I joined Splunk. I felt like it was the most powerful machine data analytics thing out there. So I joined Splunk in 2012 because I had this crazy itch to just go do things with data. And I have never had a bigger itch until 2016 when I really went deep into blockchain, and I recognized that, hey, this technology is going to be as game-changing as data itself has been across every industry. Yeah.
And were you thinking about blockchain? So, I mean, 2016, there were already many, there was a lot of definitions. There were a lot of coins, for example. Everything wasn't about just the one ever-present currency that is really where a lot of the fads have come from. Were you thinking about blockchain and cryptocurrency before that?
Yeah. So I
collect any or invest in any? Was it something you put that kind of thought into?
Not as much as I should have. So prior to 26, so what happened was I heard this thing called Bitcoin. Some of my friends were talking about it, and I thought it's a novelty. It'll never go anywhere. This is early 2010s. Mm-hmm. And then a friend of mine told me about this thing coming out called Ethereum in 2014. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I set up a node and I was mining on the test net. But I thought the same kind of thing. Oh, this will never go anywhere, but it's really interesting. I didn't mine any on mainnet, unfortunately. And then I just kept seeing smart people go into this. And I kind of understood this is a little bit more than cryptocurrency, but I had this level of skepticism that this is still hype, a fad. It's potentially going to zero. And I came to the point in 2016, February of 2016, where I said, I either need to confirm my skepticism or remove it. So I took 6 weeks off. I had a baby a little while before, and I said, I'm going to spend the 6 weeks dedicated to like my family and really understanding this blockchain stuff.
Your order there was the correct answer, my family, because you were on the cusp of getting yourself in trouble.
Yeah. So I went down the rabbit hole, and I just did everything I could, from the technical side of things to reading every business book I could. And I came out of the 6 weeks with the okay, my skepticism's gone. I don't care how much hype goes into the space. I'm dedicating my career to it.
Was there a single term or a few terms or concepts that you came out that were on top? Because that process, I can see how someone thinking about it, because Bitcoin was the meme, right? And it drove a lot of the public facing thought, the lay press thought. So Bitcoin is not gonna be on the top of a list, I would think.
When I recognized that what blockchain enables is what it does is it closes this trust gap, that just changed my perspective on how the world is going to evolve. We've had a few of these gaps closed in modern history. The printing press closed the knowledge gap in the 1400s. The steam engine, the invention of the engine, closed the power gap. The telecommunications closed the distance gap. And blockchain closes the trust gap. And it's interesting that nobody really recognized these gaps existed until after they solved the problem. In fact, people thought that their horses were good enough. They thought that they were better than cars because there wasn't good infrastructure laid yet for cars. So horses could go anywhere, but cars couldn't. And that's kind of where we are with blockchain right now. We're still laying the infrastructure. Same thing with telecommunications. People said, why would I want to sit down and type out an email when I could just pick up the phone and call somebody? But once the infrastructure is laid, the barrier to entry goes lower, and the benefits just make it the thing you want to use.
So trust. Go ahead, Birch.
Well, I guess normalize everyone's mind. So we've got listeners who may really have just heard blockchain and Bitcoin and some of the buzzwords. Like, why is it cool? Like, what does it actually do for you or for anyone?
It allows you to share information with parties that you don't necessarily trust in an agreed upon and verifiable way without a third party. So this has always required an intermediary or a third party. And the use cases for information are wide. It can be anything from a store of value, such as like Bitcoin, to a set of contracts that we're going to agree on, to healthcare, to insurance. And the use cases are massive. So take, for example, I recently moved from San Francisco to Florida. And in that process, I bought a
Congratulations. House. That deserves some applause.
Yeah. And I had to pay, I don't know, a couple $1,000s for a title search for my house. And it was also a long process. It wasn't instantaneous. And really what they're trying to do is just verify that there isn't someone else that owns this house, this property, or has a lien on it. And this is information that requires third parties, and it should just be on a distributed ledger that many parties can connect to, and there's no single entity that can control everything.
And title searches do seem pretty ripe. I mean, they seem a little anachronistic. And I've gone through that process myself in real estate transactions a lot. And I'm kind of wondering, is this a problem that makes sense to solve in? Well, I mean, I feel like there's different audiences and different communities and even nations and cultures that would have different appetites for solving problems. In the sense that for me, it costs money. It makes the transaction go a little slower, but it's not a big deal. But let's say, we're talking about a developing nation where their problems are going to be a lot different. So, do you look at these, take title search or contracts, is it a different question that you're answering for different?
Yeah. And some countries, this is already a problem where some governments are coming in and say, you don't own that property, somebody else does. It's a friend of theirs. And they say, no, I do. Here's my piece of paper. And they say that paper doesn't agree with our records, and they can just seize the land. But
how would you institute, how do we trust the contract, the smart contract that sits on the blockchain in the first place? I mean, you have to have an institution that would agree with that's binding.
So let's actually use that example to answer the second part of what I think we're still missing, which is like walk us through how a transaction works in a blockchain world, and we can use this
kind of the logic of the blockchain.
Yeah.
Like a workflow.
Yeah. First of all, all a blockchain is a ledger. It's a ledger like an Excel sheet or a paper ledger you might write down on, but it has 3 key attributes. It's immutable, distributed, and decentralized. So let's break that down. It's immutable, which means that you can't change it. Once you write to it, it's on forever. So it's kind of like you have a sheet of paper. All 3 of us have a sheet of paper, and we write down the same transaction happened in permanent ink and marker, so you can't erase it. It's distributed, meaning that all of us have a copy, and now there should be many more than 3. But it's kind of magical in that whenever somebody writes an update to a transaction, we verify that we both parties agree, and then everybody gets a copy of that update. So all of our papers would update.
And so that means no one can be like, yeah, even though it's written in permanent ink, mine is different. Like, no, everyone has a copy.
And that's where we get to the decentralized mutable, distributed, decentralized portion, which means if Birch were to go over there and scratch out one of those transactions, all of us would say, hey, we don't agree with that. Our copy is different. And so there's various levels of like how many agree and disagree. You've probably heard of like 51% attacks, and based on what consensus model you're talking about, there's various pros and cons. But the 3 attributes, it's immutable, distributed, and decentralized. But take that a step back. You might be asking, hey, wait a second. You're talking about a database here where everybody stores a copy of every transaction forever because the transaction is actually linked to previous transactions with hashes. And that must be the slowest, most expensive database ever. And a lot of times...
It is.
It can be from the right perspective. From the read perspective, you actually get a lot of benefits because there's lots of copies of the data out there. So you get some prevention of denial of service attacks and so on. But the right perspective, it's very expensive. It can be very expensive. And so that means that it shouldn't be used for all use cases. Most of the time you want a traditional database, not a blockchain. It's when you need this to close this trust gap. That's when you should consider using a blockchain.
So when there's a new, okay, so you're saying the reads are actually fast because you've got parallelization. You
can go to any node in the database, I guess, or in the system.
But how does the write occur?
Well, it depends on the blockchain.
Oh,
so let me ask, kind of in response to it, is there enough standardization because you have multiple blockchains, multiple protocols, a lot of different concepts. Mm-hmm. Is there enough standardization to get anything done?
Yeah, that's something that the community is actively working towards. There's projects like Cosmos that are working on interoperability between blockchains. There are things like Polkadot, which has other things like Substrate. So there's definitely a lot of development going off in interoperability, especially since enterprises are somewhat resistant to using public chains, or have been. They're actually opening up to it more and more now because they're used to their walled garden approach. We want to put walls around everything. We want everything permissioned and private, but they recognize that they get greater value when connecting it to public infrastructure, something we're seeing over time. And this is similar to how intranets and internets played out early on. Enterprises wanted their intranet. And then later they realized they need to connect their individuals to the internet.
And also, it reminded me of cloud. Like a couple of years ago, no company wanted to host anything in the public cloud, and for various reasons, they are now doing that.
Mm-hmm. And you had a kind of a spectrum of companies that are more willing or less willing to put their stuff in the cloud. So are you seeing similar trends in blockchain? So like what types of companies are most interested and most forward looking?
Oh, well, so what we're seeing is financial services and public sector are investing the most right now. There's a lot of projects going on with supply chains and healthcare and so on, but across the board, we see a tremendous amount of just in financial services. I mean, last year, enterprise spending, according to Gartner, was $2.7 billion on blockchain.
Really?
It's like an 80% increase over 2018. And that's compound annual growth of 60% through 2023. So like, this is something that the media portrays as kind of hype and stuff, so on, but there's money being spent here, a lot of it, because this is going to disrupt business models in the long term. Mm-hmm. In the medium term, it's going to be used for increased efficiency. And then right now it's being used mostly for security.
Okay. So kind of like how the internet, it led to a lot of change in business models, but it took a while.
Right. Yeah.
Taking a huge step back. So what role?
And I can give you an example of that, how to, if you want, like how business models will change.
Do it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. Let's consider there's this idea that the 2010s or the 2000s where products were being built. In the 2010s, people were building platforms. In the 2020s, people are going to build protocols. And these protocols will be enabled through distributed ledger technologies. And so business models are going to be disrupted. So let's consider something that's difficult to disrupt, which is Amazon. They are great at creating. Jeff Bezos is famous for the saying, "Your margin is my opportunity." So they operate very, very clean. But for S3, they have to procure storage ahead of time before people need it. So they have this CapEx expenditure where they're spending money to get the storage before people need it. With decentralized storage protocols such as Storage, Filecoin, SIA, you could actually leverage the unused storage that enterprises and individuals already have, and you could distribute data across them. So now there's no CapEx cost for distributed storage, and people that already have this storage can actually make revenue off of it. And so that will make it very hard for centralized organizations to compete, simply because it's hard to beat that margin.
Okay. So now that sounds to me a little bit like BitTorrent in the way that it kind of distributed content.
Yeah. And so you actually can, and people think, store data on other people's servers. This sounds very insecure. And you can actually increase security because you can shard up the data. You can store it in little slices and then reconstitute it so that even if a single server were compromised, the data is probably encrypted, but it's also sharded and split up into multiple pieces. So it's not like there's this honeypot, this central storage of credit records that somebody can go and hack and get all that data.
Mm-hmm. So I'm immediately thinking of the pros and the cons. And the first thing that my mind went to as you were describing this on the con side was, what are people going to be using this for? And depending on, I'm sure the protocols have different levels of discoverability or identity. But are people going to use such a protocol to store things they shouldn't be storing?
Well, almost every new technology that's created is used for both good and evil. So
I believe it was President Taft who said, "With great strength comes great responsibility." No, did I miss wrong person? Not Taft. I think
that was Michael Scott. I thought that was Michael Scott.
Oh, definitely. I always heard great power. Yeah, comes great responsibility, and I thought it was Sudo who said that.
No, it was Zulu.
That was Zerg.
Uncle.
All right. So
this enables even individuals to take control of their own data, which hasn't been possible before now. So also when I moved, I had to update my address, my system of record, my address where I live in so many places, from credit cards to cell phone to all over the place, bank accounts. And then each one of those institutions stores a copy of my PII data or whatever my data in one of their own databases repository, which is obviously can be breached and has happened. Instead, I'd rather be in control of my data. So I rather would have my personal information sharded across many systems that I hold the keys to, and I can grant and revoke access to those. So if my bank needs to know where I live, I can get a little request. Hey, they want to know right now because they're going to send you an email, and I can send it to them. But if I no longer have the cellular provider anymore, I don't want them to have any of my information and they can't query it.
So let me follow this thread a little bit further. So every website that we have, every service that we interact with, there's usually a concept of a profile, and you're filling out some of your data. And, financial services, it's a lot. Social network, it's a lot, but it's a lot different type of data. But I like the idea here. What would have to happen for this to be something that's prevalent? Are there any technical blockers, or is it more of just your basic adoption story, and these things just kind of take time? Because that'd be nice if my social security number were not out in the open like it is right now.
Yeah. Like I said, we're laying the infrastructure right now. We can see that this is feasible from the technology perspective, but we need to scale things, and scaling is happening very quickly. And another thing is, though, we're going to be able to do things that weren't possible before with this. So not only will you be able to share information, you can share information with the minimal exposure of that information. So using things like zero knowledge proofs. So I can prove to something to you without revealing the underlying information. So for example, you need to know whether or not I'm over 21. Maybe it's to go to a website, or maybe it's to go to a bar. Well, if you go to a bar, the way you verify you're over 21 is you show them your ID, which has your address, it has your weight, it has your height, all these things they don't need to know. Maybe another website, you need to prove your income, but you don't want to have to share your bank account statements and everything, which is how we do it today. Like when I got a mortgage on my house, I had to share all my assets and where I got them from. With zero knowledge proofs, you can prove something is true without revealing the underlying information. And I know you want an example so we can understand that. So imagine I want to prove to you that I'm holding a red card without telling you it's the Queen of Hearts.
Okay. What
I'm going to let you do is I'm going to let you look at the deck. I'm going to let you count all 52 cards, make sure they're all there. And then I'm going to pull out my card and say, I'm going to prove this to you. This is red. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you I'm going to pull out 26 black cards and let you look at all of them from that deck. And so now what you know is, he must have a red card, but I don't know what one it is.
Okay. I understand the example, but I feel like that's so oversimplified in the sense that problem space of number of cards is very narrow. So
it's very oversimplified.
Yeah, very simplified. So, wouldn't you I guess you'd have to tune that proof computation to, I don't know. I'm still kind of wrestling with the concept here because it's a new one to me. So, okay. While I think on that a little bit more, I wanted to go back to a project that you were involved in over at the SplunkTalk last year in 2019. Can you kind of
our most recurring story?
It is, but we hadn't had Nate on to talk about it yet.
So we're going to talk about it now, and we're never talking about it again.
This will be the last time. And then I wanted to hear, what projects are you working on since then? But could you kind of take us through that project of, go ahead. I don't want to share the name. It's all you, man.
Yeah. So marketing came to us, our blockchain team at Splunk, and said, "Hey, can you create a cryptocurrency for engagement at .conf?" And we said, "Well, we're not in the business of creating cryptocurrencies, but we'll make you a deal. If we can showcase what Splunk's really good at in the blockchain space, then we'll do it." And they said, "Okay, deal." And so we created a couple different cryptocurrencies, a fungible and a non-fungible one. I can talk about what that is. And we allowed people to engage in different ways. And it was pretty neat because we had over 10,000 attendees, and they were all able to use cryptocurrency and blockchain without even knowing they were using cryptocurrency and blockchain.
On fungible and unfungible, because I'm pretty sure people have told me that I'm a pretty funge guy. So
I think this has to do with either Smurfs or mushrooms.
You're definitely non-fungible.
I actually know a little bit about it, but I'm not going to butcher the term, so I want to hear it from you. Definitely, Nate.
Yeah, so fungible means one is the same as any other. So this dollar bill and this dollar bill, they're all they're all fungible. One is interchangeable for the other. Like, doesn't matter which one you have. Now, non-fungible is maybe something specific. Like, have you heard of CryptoKitties?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Crypto. So you can own a unique one. So you can own a unique crypto cat instead of a physical dollar. So like there's these things called any piece of Ethereum or any Bitcoin is the same as any other Bitcoin. But at .conf, we were issuing non-fungible butter. Like we had Buttercup bucks, which are fungible. You can use those to buy things at the swag store, for example, or donate to charity. And we had non-fungible tokens. So like, for example, you were one of the first 500 people in a keynote. You could scan this poker chip and you earned a non-fungible token that proved that you were an attendee at one of the first 500 at .conf.
Okay.
Whenever anybody went to registration, they were able to get a non-fungible token that they attended .conf 2019.
So it was kind of like achievement unlocking in a game system.
I was trying to find
these can be used for education too. So you can certify that someone has passed a course, for example.
Okay, gotcha. So I just passed, Splunk, a SEC one or, some certification test, and that mark of having done that could exist on this blockchain.
Mm-hmm. And you can prove to people that you have taken the courses. In fact, you can even, if you think about that zero knowledge stuff, eventually you'll be able to prove that you have a certain knowledge level without revealing like how you even got it.
Okay. So is that one fungible because it's like my specific thing and it's unique, or does that make it not?
To you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like you having passed this gate is the unique part. Me having passed the same gate would be different.
So let me come up with a stupid way to remember the difference. Things are more fungible when they're specific to you.
Keep working on that.
No,
I don't
non-fungible. So you're non-fungible because there's only one birch out there. Well, I mean, there could be, no birch is created equal. That's what I mean.
So you don't know about my clone army.
Okay. Yeah.
So what were the outcomes? Oh, and definitely talk about the kind of Splunk for good aspect as well.
Yeah. So, one of the pieces of engagement, we wanted to raise money for various charities out there. And so we allowed people to donate these Buttercup bucks to various charities. And I know that Jason Hupka did a great job covering this in a recent
That's
podcast.
right. We did talk about it there too.
But our team is working now. That generated anyway.
What happened as a lot of interest? That project, right?
Okay, that's a good point. So as a result of that project, we had a lot of some of the biggest companies in the world reached out to us because they have things going on that they're not allowed to talk about yet. And then also we had various charities reach out and some nonprofits. And so we're doing some pretty neat stuff that you're going to see. I won't reveal timing and stuff, but we're doing some pretty neat stuff that came out of that we just totally didn't expect.
Right.
So it was a pretty cool success.
There's like irony or something to the fact that we're doing some really cool stuff, and you're gonna have to just trust me that it will happen. Sure, I'll trust you. You're filling the trust gap.
Yeah. And so what's interesting is the things we're doing now, some of it's being recorded on Ledger right now. So not only am I saying trust me, but you'll be able to verify later that I wasn't just blowing smoke. Like we're working on it now, and you'll be able to see. And so you said something about cloud. This is kind of a big deal, closing the trust gap. Right now, we're required to trust cloud providers. Like you send your data into Splunk Cloud and you just trust that Splunk's a good steward of that data. It should be trust but verify. And so this is some of the technology we're developing such that data that goes inside of Splunk, you can verify that the data that's in a Splunk instance has not been corrupted, tampered, lost, deleted in any way.
But you wouldn't do that on a per event basis, would you? That seems like that wouldn't scale.
Well, it depends on where you want to do the hashing. You could do it on a per field level if you had the right amount of computing power and so on. If you wanted to expend that cost, this is something you could do with Data Stream Processor. You could add a function in there to do a hash of fields even, and then you can hash the hashes, which is what we're doing right now. So we we hash every 128 kilobytes in Splunk, and then we create a level 2 hash of every time a bucket rolls of all those level 1 hashes. And so then we just store that level 2 hash on a blockchain. And now we can prove, since that hash was written, everything in this bucket is good to go.
Okay. So that kind of actually answers what I was thinking in my head, is that you needed to have a way to scale it, based on the use case. So in this case, a level 2 hash would serve that.
Yeah.
At least down to the granularity of that bucket.
Oh, okay. Because the frequency of needing to do that calculation is sustainable.
Well, one of the reasons we hash the hashes is it's expensive to write to blockchains.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so we want to reduce the amount of writes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But this actually causes a cool side effect, because people want to write data too. They want the immutability aspect that a blockchain provides. So supply chains want to do things like write temperature data of the milk truck, even to prove that the temperature of the milk truck didn't go over a certain temperature. Otherwise, a smart contract can execute and you get some of your money back because the milk's spoiled. But it's really expensive to write all that sensor data. So why not write that data to Splunk, which is where you want to analyze it anyway. And then Splunk can write the hash to a blockchain to allow you to prove that the data hasn't been modified. So you reduce the amount of writes to the blockchain by many orders of magnitude. In fact, you determine how often you want to write to the blockchain.
You got my mind into a perpetual motion machine where every time you write the hash, you Splunk that activity and what that hash is. And now you're splunking hashes of hashes.
I think you've broken something.
Yeah. So when my daughter was born, for example, I obviously, like everybody does, I splunked all of her information, her latitude, her longitude, her birth parents.
Everyone who listens to this podcast anyway, but yes.
Yeah. And then Splunk wrote a salted hash with some extra metadata to Ethereum mainnet. And so now I can have this copy of this raw data. I don't even have to store it in Splunk anymore. But I can compute a SHA-256 of this and compare it to what's on Ethereum mainnet and prove that I was the first one to record this information. It existed at this point in time. Mm-hmm. And so now my daughter is the new kid on the blockchain.
So you've said mainnet a couple. You've said mainnet. Go ahead, Birch.
While he's dishing out clever jokes, didn't you?
I gotta give Lenny Stein credit for that one.
Oh, okay. Didn't you have like a Twitter handle or something that was like Data Geeks?
Data physicist,
and
yeah, that's my Twitter. Yeah.
And I tell you this so many times that every time I hear that, all I hear is DATE space. And I'm like, what a
physicist.
what a leading innovator in the space of online dating.
So I want to go back to,
and you can make uncensorable things too. So you brought up Twitter there. There's right now there's tweets that are censored, taken off, put on, but using distributed ledger technology, you can make everything permanent and never be removed. So there's a project called FeedWave that's FeedWeb. Anyway, it's built on this Arweave technology, which is like a permaweb. So you can store things permanently. So if you go to McKervey.com right now, my website, it actually is on the Arweave. It's a permaweb. So that data will exist forever. There's never going to be a 404 of that data anymore. Wow. So
I just got a 400 though. Just saying. I probably typed it wrong. I probably typed it wrong. Don't worry.
McKervey.com.
I'm not going to debug it while we're.
So I gotta. I'll fix that. But
now he's going to be distracted for the rest of the time.
Yep.
So go to HTTP. Try HTTPS. I gotta fix the HTTP.
You got a proxy problem there, or redirect.
Yes. So my next thing is to set up a decentralized DNS record. So that's my problem right now, is I'm not using a decentralized DNS record.
So there are two things. Choose your own adventure here. Before you joined, we were actually talking about the new dashboards beta. I know that played a role in Buttercup Bucks. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that. I'd also still like to hear about the different roles that you had at Splunk. I mean, you told us about coming out of school, becoming a sysadmin, playing with Splunk, but you've held a number of different roles here.
Yeah. So all right, we'll just go in the order you went in, unless Hal has something.
Go for it. No.
Connect 4.
Dashboards.
Dashboards. Yeah, this new dashboarding framework is something that I've dreamed about forever. Stephen Ludke has dreamed about forever. You should have Stephen on the show sometime because he is the dashboard guru. He makes the most amazing dashboards.
The two of you seem to go everywhere together. I just assumed he would he would saddle up next to you.
I expect him to kind of poke his head up all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So it allows you to do pixel perfect visualizations, and we use this heavily at a recent conference, ETH Denver conference, Ethereum conference, where we open source Splunk Connect for Ethereum, and then we allowed people to analyze data and just do things with it. So definitely check out our blog and see the different things people created using this new dashboarding framework. But it's pretty awesome. Any questions there before I move on to
I guess like feature wise, like why is it a game changer? Why is it more than an incremental improvement in your mind over the existing? Why is it disruptive or worth looking into?
So there used to be the saying Splunk, no limits. I don't know if anybody remembers that. And that's been the case from like data ingestion size, multiple petabytes per day. But from the visualization side, there have been some limits. But now your limit is your imagination. Like you will be able to put anything anywhere and do anything. So for example, some of the stuff that we have built that we haven't shown yet for a nonprofit is we turned their website that is like a giant infographic into a live dashboard, but it's like a live infographic where you can put any art anywhere. And it's just your imagination is now the limit.
Oh, wow.
That's
so instead
neat.
of being confined to like the rows and panels that we have today in Splunk,
exactly,
maybe some form drop downs.
This is a great analogy. Traditional data analysis systems are conformed to rows and columns. It's schema at write. And Splunk was the paradigm shift that did schema at read. And so that's what the dashboarding framework is. We used to have to do rows and panels and visualization, and now it's whatever you want.
And it can be, and it can sustain that way. Okay, cool. All right, so tell us about yourself.
That doesn't mean I don't have enhancement requests and feature requests.
You wouldn't be you if you didn't. Wouldn't be you if you didn't. Yeah. Tell us what was your first gig here at Splunk when you joined?
So my first gig was professional services. I was our first highly cleared individual so I did a lot of our government deployments, which was pretty fun. Learned a lot, and a lot of non-government too. There were only 355 people at Splunk when I started, and so I'd say one of the best things I learned in professional services was actually how different businesses operate, the successful ones and the non-successful ones, and how important culture is, because that was the big thing that I think actually made companies successful, not successful, which Splunk included. We have a great culture, and I think that's one of the main reasons Splunk has had the success.
What do you mean by like what? So you're saying
I happen to agree violently with this, but how do you make it into something? How do you translate that? Because some people think about like proficiency. I'm an expert in this thing, and that's all you need. But I don't believe that that's all you need at all.
Yeah, you read the book. You Are What You Do by Ben Horowitz.
Okay,
it is awesome, and it's pretty much a book on culture. And then another good one is the $1 Trillion Coach about Bill Campbell. And if you read those two back to back, you'll actually see how they feed one another. It doesn't matter which order you read them.
So when you're saying you observed these patterns where some companies were successful and others weren't, and so you're saying culture was one of the biggest patterns there. Mm-hmm. Any other notable things?
Well, the East and the West Coast were very different. I did gigs on both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
they could be successful even.
I was about to actually ask that. It's like I live on the East Coast. A lot of my coworkers on the West Coast. There's a lot of style differences in how we engage and solve
and hours of operations.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, but you have successful companies on both coasts.
Yep.
What Okay. Can you be more specific, or are you afraid of
what's a successful pattern that you've seen?
Or just the pattern between East and West? Like, I know East has more financial services, and that's a little more like rigid and old school. West, I often associate with like Silicon Valley and a lot more like new culture where things can be more relaxed or improvised and still be extremely effective. Is it something like that, or am I missing the mark on what you saw?
I mean, that word relaxed is one I would key off of. And I think people are more direct in their conversational style as well on the East Coast.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is to have a successful culture is not based on whether you work specific hours a day or whether you dress a certain way, because we have successful companies on both ends. What's more important is things like trust. Do you work in an environment where you can trust the person above you? Willingness to talk openly. So that means also giving bad feedback, but criticize in private and commend in public.
Yeah. I've definitely encountered companies at either ends of the spectrum, I'll just say. Like, and I don't want to get too specific.
Name dropping companies. Yeah. So what happened after professional services?
So professional services, I accepted the job at Splunk 2 days before I got married, and then professional services, my first year, I was on the road 300 days. I was home 56. Ouch. And I splunked it. I didn't have it on a blockchain though, so I can't prove it. And so I wanted something. I
feel like your spouse can prove it.
So I wanted something that wasn't traveling so much. And I always loved playing with the newest versions of our software before it was out and just seeing what was coming next. And I liked telling people about it. And it turns out there's this role designed for that. It's called technical marketing. You get to play with the latest tech, and then you get to tell analysts about it, and you get to tell the community about it. And so we got up and we moved to San Francisco from Florida, and I did technical marketing, and the best role I've ever had, the most fun I've ever had until I got into the blockchain space.
Nice.
So technical marketing, you are neither a marketeer nor an engineer. It is
everyone's a marketeer.
Well, I mean, it's about communicating stories, right? And I think that's why I think you have been very successful in that, and that's kind of where I think I met you, was when you were in that role. So I seem to think that if you're a good storyteller, a good teacher, that's how you kind of bring passion to other people and help them. It's a method, it's a teaching technique, but it's to help people understand and bring on the same page. So super valuable skill. What was one of your favorite projects when you were in technical marketing?
Oh man, I've got so many. I mean, so many from the Indianapolis fight.
How about a flop?
Oh, a flop.
I do not understand that reference.
No, like something that
anything
just didn't work out. Yeah.
Oh, like flop. You were flop.
Like, man, I was really excited. I thought this was gonna.
Oh yeah, awesome. So we I can't remember what we were going to do, but we were going to do something, and if the crowd at a conference at a .conf, and if the crowd had achieved a certain metric, we were going to dunk executives for each metric they achieved. So we rented a dunk tank and brought it to our old office in Cupertino and tried to get each of the executives to get a video recording of them dunking. And surprisingly, they were all like open to it and did it. And it was cold out.
So you pre-recorded it.
We pre-recorded.
You would play it.
Yeah. So do you want to see so-and-so executive get dunked?
Okay. Gotcha.
But so we got these videos, we recorded it, and then we couldn't pull it off to get into on stage. So that was one. Oh, another one. I don't know if anyone remembers.
The executives bummed because they're like, "What? I got dunked in the cold."
I think some were bummed and some were relieved.
Okay.
Another one was, I don't know if anyone remembers the year we did the Shake demo.
I remember that very well.
And we people were shaking their phone, and if they generated enough shaking, we had a custom alert action, which was a new technology, as well as HTTP event collector.
Yeah, you'd fire a T-shirt gun, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, we fired a cannon. That fired stuffed buttercup ponies.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there was another one they could do that also fired a Hadoop, because we released stuff for Hunk, or maybe we released Hunk. No, we released stuff for Hunk. Anyway, well, the whole skit that we had devised was actually built around this Silicon Valley, this episode of Silicon Valley, the D2F, I think it was called, scenario. And we looked into getting Guilfoyle and Dinesh actually act out on stage part of the keynote, but it got kind of PG-13 or more, so we had to not do it. But
oh wow!
But now you can actually, if you go and rewatch that keynote, thinking about Silicon Valley as being our inspiration, you'll actually see it in a whole new light.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh,
yeah, I don't think I wasn't watching the show. Like, I'd seen several episodes, whatever. So I wouldn't have gotten that reference back then. So I'll have to do that.
Yeah. So you watch season 1, and a lot of it was based off of the season finale of the season finale.
So, by the way, everyone listening, everything in that television show is true. Like it's.
Isn't it crazy that
Splunk is in one of the episodes, right? At least one.
Yeah, and isn't it kind of crazy?
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy.
Like Guilfoyle's computer when they're working from the house in the background.
What were you saying, Birch? Nate.
Oh, and it's also, like you said, everything's true. Like, now the new latest seasons are around blockchain and this distributed data store.
No, I mean, it was an excellent commentary on the tech culture in the Bay Area. Like, they did a really good job at it.
Yeah.
So that brings us to where you're at with blockchain. And can you tell us about coming back to the dashboard thing? How did you and
I left out a key part of when we told marketing we'll do it, but we have to show what Splunk does in the blockchain space. So Splunk is not building blockchains. There are enough of those out there. And we're not in that business. We're not running blockchains either. What we're doing is we're enabling customers who are adopting the technology to be successful. And so the low-hanging fruit here is observability of distributed ledger technology. So this is not only the ledger itself, being able to analyze the data on ledger, it's the infrastructure behind it. So if you have any service that's running any blockchain application, even Buttercup Bucks, behind the scenes, there's content delivery networks, there's Lambda functions, there's applications like a web app. And if a transaction is failing or it's slow, it might not be the blockchain's fault. It could be any other component. And so we give complete observability into all of the infrastructure, the ledger, the node, and the infrastructure.
Oh, wow. So
is there something concrete, or was this all custom developed, or are there apps and integrations that we should know about?
Mm-hmm. So for Buttercup Bucks, we used a public blockchain sidechain of Ethereum called XDAI, because it has transactions complete in 5 seconds, but we splunked all of it. So we gave some of the node operators a curl command where it installed a Splunk forwarder and started collecting logs and metrics and sending them to a Splunk instance. We were using Splunk app for AWS to monitor our infrastructure in AWS. And we were using the before it was released version of Splunk Connect for Ethereum to analyze the ledger data. And it makes Splunk does a good job of making the data more human readable. If you ever look at an Ethereum transaction, it is total machine data. It's like complete hex. And Splunk actually does really neat things, like where we do this thing called ABI decoding. There's an application binary interface. So you just get this binary blob, and Splunk will automatically decode that. So all the messages people were sending in Buttercup Bucks transactions, we automatically translate that to human readable text. And this is kind of like challenging without something like Splunk.
So did your team produce the app and host the blockchain technology and like you
so we didn't host the blockchain technology. So we manage everything else. So Siegfried Bauer wrote the web app, Stephen Ludke built all the dashboards, and Ryan Moore did all the deployment and integration.
Wow.
And I took the credit.
So talking about the infrastructure, and you mentioned that nodes run a curl script.
And Ben Derringer project managed and kept us in line.
Nice.
It's called out there.
He's vital.
And did a ton of awesome stuff at the event. Like he got us tens of thousands of wooden poker chips and everything with QR codes on them.
Person.
Yeah.
So the infrastructure, was this something that, I mean, did you have a series of servers that were required to do the processing of every transaction of Buttercup bucks, or did that happen separately throughout?
Yeah, this is one of the nice things about these public permissionless blockchains is people can operate nodes and they're incentivized to operate them and process the transactions because they get rewarded for doing so.
Okay.
Tell me more about that. Double click.
Yeah.
No, you can't say that double.
Okay, fine. Right click, select open.
Just never mind.
Yeah. So most public permissionless blockchains have incentive mechanisms for people that are doing validation of transactions, validator nodes. The alternative also exists in a lot of permissioned blockchain deployments. There isn't an incentive of a reward. It's just your job to do it. So these are a lot of Hyperledger Fabric deployments. There isn't even a token today in Hyperledger Fabric. But like, for example, with Bitcoin, we're all... Yeah.
Hyperledger Fabric, great music.
Yeah. So like Bitcoin and Ethereum today are based on proof of work. So the security relies on crunching these numbers and coming up with this number that has a bunch of preceding zeros. And if you're the winner, then you get a reward paid out in Ethereum or Bitcoin. And it also, one day you're not going to mine any more Bitcoin. I can't remember what year it is. It's a long way away from now. But you'll still be able to earn value from processing transactions. And then Ethereum's moving to proof of stake. So it's a little bit different than proof of work, but there's just these different incentive mechanisms for validating transactions.
Okay. So your incentive to participate in the network powers the network. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that so you had to incentive. Okay. So what was the incentive for anyone to run Buttercup bucks?
So there is this set of node operators that run X DAI and get rewarded in DAI. DAI is equivalent to US dollar. Mm-hmm. 1 DAI equals $1. And so they process these transactions and they get rewarded. And so we just said, hey, we'll go use that network. It's public. Anybody can use it. Mm-hmm. It's like a public database.
Gotcha.
Huh.
So someone tweeted, I think of Bitcoin Maximalist tweeted, this looks like a great use case for a centralized data repository. You shouldn't have used, and I was like, well, if we use a centralized data repository, then there's a single source of compromise. Also, we have to put our efforts into keeping that database up and running. It's subject to denial of service attacks. We have to patch the security issues. So it's actually more work in that case for us to have used a centralized data repository and less secure.
You kind of use those three principles to make your argument, right?
Yeah. So what they said, this is a great use case for. Now, Don't get me wrong. I said in the beginning, most use cases don't need a blockchain or distributed ledger. In fact, we could have done Buttercup bucks in a central data repository that we managed and we would own. But in this case, not only do we not have to manage any of that, also the users own their own tokens and keys. And so they still have them today. They could go to another event. Maybe it's a Splunk Live. Maybe it's a Cisco user group, or I don't know. And they could actually send people their Buttercup bucks or prove that they were there. They own them.
I think in the event, the recording we had with Jason, we someone actually logged into the app and sent the remainder of their Buttercup bucks over.
I'd have to find my shortcut. I've got it somewhere.
Yeah. Hey, we're coming up on time here, but I can't help but pick out some of the things behind you that have been a theme in our podcast. So, is that a fez?
That is a fez.
He is one of the legacy holders of the fezes.
Were you fezzed pre or post your employment at Splunk?
Post.
Ooh.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, this is what I might call the friend of Rachel era.
I don't know exactly when I got it.
Okay, mine was the friend of Rachel era. So it's before some of the formality of that. So it was sort of honorary, I guess.
Yep.
And then next to that, on our right, is one of the very ponies that
this one's special. This one's very special. Yes.
But before you show us what's special about it, you show us,
yes.
So that pony in the non-special form is what you were referring to being launched out of the air cannon at in one of the flops.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we launched a bunch of these. In the audience, and now this one has a cape.
Ooh. How'd you get that done?
Simultaneous.
Well, I believe it was. I know it was a Splunk Trust member. I believe it was Rich. I think his family made these capes.
His family attended,
and they had their own capes. That's
yes,
right.
They did. I remember that very well because they hung out in the gamer lounge with me a lot.
Do we still do that? The gamer lounge?
Yes.
I feel like okay.
So I don't know.
Taking different forms.
When I was a customer, I remember being really conflicted because I was like, I want to play video games, but I also really want to go to like every talk.
Yeah. Well, Oh yeah. That's a good story. It going.
Got more stuff on our shelf. So this is Pete. I'm saying it wrong. Schmidt Peterson Racing Team, and the Arrow was a big sponsor, and so they asked Splunk if we could help do some data analytics and see if we could help get one of their cars in the top 10 for the Indy 500. And so we started splunking the data, and I can't tell you like specifics, but it was some pretty cool stuff that they would ask us if we could determine something at something point in the time so they could optimize their car. Wow. And so we did a bunch of that, and they had 3 cars, and they wanted to get one in the top 10, and they got all 3 in the top 10.
Wow.
Thank you, Splunk.
Including pole position, which they said is the next best thing to winning the Indy 500.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was pretty awesome. And again, that was Steven that did a lot of that splunking.
What else you got over there? I think I see a... there goes my fez. So this is an award I got for Technical Services Person of the Year 2013. So that was for the 300 days on the road. I got one of those. And then these are the poker chips I was talking about. Oh yeah.
So if somebody scans this, this is gonna be fun. So the first person to scan,
the first person
to scan this is going to probably redeem some credit card.
Have to use our app, right?
No, they just use their camera on their phone, and it'll do everything for them. Yeah.
Wow.
And then we had different poker chips for different circumstances. So these black ones are worth like $5 buttercup bucks, and you could get them doing various things. But these gold ones, these are not made out of wood. They're a little special. They may be real gold. You'll have to find one. These were given to execs. So if you had a good conversation with an executive, or if you were helping the community, for example, the executives were giving out a few of these. Each executive
that's neat.
a few of these.
Wow.
And so these are worth 100 buttercup bucks. And you'll also, and so like if you scan this one, it's going to be a lie. It's going to give you an NFT that says you met a Splunk executive. And so this is something important to point out. A blockchain closes the trust gap, but it's the garbage in, garbage out is still true. So if you put bad data on a blockchain, it doesn't make it true. It still can be bad data on a blockchain.
It's just validated that the garbage
we know this bad data was written at this time and date by this unique identifier.
Exactly. Yep. Now you can put a lot of precautions in, like you can have people sign transactions with their digital signature to vouch that they agree. And then the backup. Yeah. Anyway.
What's that last trophy over there?
Oh, that is last year our team participated in the ETH Denver hackathon. and
That's
we
neat.
won So we won the Open Track and the WOW Award, and these were 3D printed at the event, which was kind of nice.
Oh, very cool.
And so then this year we decided not to hack, but to sponsor and to give back.
Very neat.
We really wanted to hack.
Got that itch. So this might have been the episode for which it requires the most focus and thinking, because blockchain being such a new technology, I think most people need, like, I know for me, I was like, oh God, I gotta focus every word he's saying. Whereas most of the time it's all silly jokes.
You've been deep in it, Nate.
Yeah.
Hey, I've been deep in it. Yeah. I remember the days when I decided, when I started doing this, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much. And I still feel that way. There's so much going on. This industry is moving so fast, and it's a combination of so many different fields. It's not just cryptography and computer science. It's also governance, game theory, and economics. They're all merging, and we're getting talents from all these different spaces to come together. I've learned so much about all these things.
Even the fact that you said financial services and public sector is like leading the charge is jaw-dropping to me, because I feel like historically those two industries are the laggards. Like they have
financial services
issues with trust.
Yeah. Financial services knows they're going to be completely disrupted if they don't do this.
That's their incentive.
Yeah. And then public sector that just has a bunch of benefits. I mean, like, look at the work that Health and Human Services is doing. Shout out to Jose, Arietta, and Oki. They're really pushing things forward to make government organizations more efficient to start with. And just, it's awesome. This is going to free up a lot of government inefficiency. So there's also security benefits too. So there's a lot of motivation for public sector to invest in this technology. And we want to help them. I mean, Splunk is in such a unique position because there's all these different companies that are trying to do this in a box and not let their competitors know, or building a consortium and trying to keep some stuff secret. But we at Splunk are actually seeing what all the different companies are doing, and we can help them be successful because we've seen what other successful deployments look like.
Wow. So we're right up on time here. Hal, any final thoughts?
I was just going to thank Nate for joining us, and I think what you're doing is really amazingly interesting. So keep it up, and whenever you have more stuff to share that you can't tell us about right now, let us know.
Yeah, I feel like Nate might be one of the first repeat guests that we have, because there's so much changing and so much to be developed. So thank you. Thanks for educating us and telling us about yourself and making it so that you have to clean up your room again.
Yeah.
Oh, we messed up his back wall, didn't we? Oh, well.
Yes.
All right. Thanks a lot, Nate. We appreciate your time.
Thank you all. Talk to you later.
Bye.